We've seen a lot of town halls from the Alberta Prosperity Project. They're gathering a lot of digital signatures with the intent to sign the petition for referendum.
Yeah.
And that's in the hundreds of thousands, and they would need only 600,000 under the old rules and only like 170,000.
They've already surpassed. I think they're well into the actual the range where it would be passed. Passed, the intent would be passed to sign.
They are gaining some momentum. They've had plenty of town halls. We've also seen a couple other little subgroups pop up. So the Alberta Prosperity Project, they released their wording. They released their question for the referendum.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's talk about that.
That came out, and there's some people that said, well, we never voted on this being our official representative of the movement.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be, there's no crosstalk between all these groups that I'm aware of. You also have different voices. You have different ideas on the time frames. So where's the coordination? And then you also have the Alberta Republican Party. That shows up. We interviewed Cam Davies. If you're watching this, you may have watched that as well, or if you haven't, we have some clips and a full episode from that. That's on the political side, where these other groups are not political. And I think people are treating this as a zero-sum game, saying that a political group cannot exist with the same goal because it has to be a citizen-led referendum.
Right.
But then the question's, well, what does political pressure look like from within the legislature? What happens if, let's say you get a couple Alberta Republican MLAs? Does that help push the UCP to better negotiate if there's a successful referendum? Like, what does that actually look like? Or is the presence of a Alberta Republican Party going to harm the movement because of optics or scandals or any other reasons? Like, is it just easy target for media to say, well, Republicans, look at those Americans. Maybe the average person doesn't understand what a republic is, so they wouldn't even comprehend Alberta becoming a republic. They would think that like a new Alberta would keep the Westminster or keep monarchy ties or whatever. So maybe the average person can't even comprehend why a group would call themselves Alberta Republicans, or what principles a Republican would stand for. They only see it as a uniquely American thing, even though most the
full names of most countries include republic in some
republics.
Way, right?
They're democratic republics. Most democracies are like a democratic republic if they aren't tied to the monarchy in some kind of way.
Yeah, it refers to a founding document and some way or another. I mean, I don't know. Like there's so many ways to look at it, and I certainly get the feeling too that there's conservatives we've talked about this before a little bit. Like conservatives have this thing where we're just so damn independent that and we're so idealistic and like, I don't know, stubborn, pig-headed in certain ways, where it's like, this is my vision, and screw you if you're not into it, because I'll make it on my own. We got that entrepreneurial spirit, in a way, and it's great when you're talking about like building a barn or some shit like that. But if you're like trying to build a political movement that affects how many millions of people are in Alberta, like I said, like 4 or 6 million people, something like that. Maybe it's 4 or 5 million people, you can't be pissing at each other and sniping and moaning about, all these little things. And so, I mean, on the one hand, I can appreciate when people they've got a vision they believe that this is the best way forward. This is the most true to what, if your goal is an independent Alberta, this is the way we should go. But if we're just going to fractionate and we're not going to pick a leader or pick a platform or an ideology or a party or something, it's sort of ripe for, people. This is something that the left does really well that the right doesn't. The left will. I mean, we saw it in the last election. Like who would have foresaw the NDP voters collapsing and like just folding on their principles so easily, and just in a complete abandonment of their party just to ensure that a conservative never won. Like that was crazy, but they'll do it. They'll do it. They'll rally behind a cause like that, even if they don't agree on the particulars. So that's, I think, kind of what we're gonna have to. We're not gonna have a choice. We're gonna have to do that.
Not that it's even like a full, like, plug your nose and deal with something kind of situation. Really isn't. But I think that already kind of happened with Danielle Smith, and that's why the UCP had as much support as it did. They saw enough there. They're like, okay, well, maybe she's not the perfect libertarian, or maybe she's like, she hasn't downsized the government. She's increased the public sector, but spending's gone up. And that doesn't really fit within a conservative mindset.
Yeah.
So there are some that were critical that still supported her despite not being a perfect alignment. So we are seeing some compromise, but perhaps it's I'm worried that some egos or people are too quick to demonize, where you see a demonization of a new party like the Alberta Republicans. There are some people that say like, well, Smith and the UCP will get us to the referendum, through the referendum, and then we'll negotiate. Then there's others who don't trust Smith and don't trust anybody in the government. So they say, we can't trust a new party. They're just as corrupt as all the others. And they don't, without any like full, like we haven't seen all their actions. We haven't seen everything unfold, so you don't really have a base of evidence for that. So with that, they're saying like, well, we can't trust anybody, any leader, any politician we can't trust, and we need a citizen-led referendum. Like, well, yes, maybe it passes. What happens then? Who's negotiating?
Yeah, that's right.
And how are we building a new Alberta? What is the framework behind that?
Yeah.
And then the questions, what vision of Alberta are we leaning towards? And do people have a clear vision of Alberta that resonates with more Albertans? Is there a group really communicating that? Perhaps you can't fully put in a plan for like, this is how we would 100% build it, because there's so many unknowns that would be discovered during the negotiation process. But having something to aim towards, would that help convince people? Is that part of the communication? I can't say for sure. Like, I don't have these answers, but I would love to see the leaders of these different groups get together and explore some of these, like, explore this, say like, what's our strategy? How do we approach it? What are the optics? What are some no-goes? Like,
what are the deal breakers here?
That makes, like, what are the things that really hurts the movement from an optic standpoint? Here are things you say, here are things you don't say. Can we agree on some things? And what about time frame? What about like, there's even no consensus on this. So like, how early do we want to run one? Like, if we go too early and it fails, then we wait 5 years, and like the next one would take a while to do. So
and the goal should be to capital, like, it's such a delicate balance of wanting to, you want to capitalize on momentum, but you want to have enough time to unify the messaging and get some converts here. Like, I think at last count, I mean, it's so hard to tell what polls you can take seriously anymore, but it seemed that early polling was showing about 30 to 35% were in favor of separation, and then I saw some recent ones that showed up to about 40 to 45%. So that's a nice little jump, but if you can't really ever tell if that's going to be like, is that the apex of it? Like, is the amount of time and energy required to secure that final 6% of the votes to take it over the top? Is that even possible? Is that something that's so it's hard. It's so hard to say. And certainly to your point, the way to get there is not to have leaders of these separate movements all ideologically aimed towards the same goal, sniping at each other on Twitter, or calling each other grifters, or going after each other like this. So I think what this means, James, is that you and I need to take this as a call to action to get some of these guys on the podcast. Do a big old round table, get these guys in a room together, get these big swinging dicks together to sit down and agree to something for once in their goddamn lives. And because I bet they agree on way more than they disagree. And it'd be nice, like you say, to find out, okay, well, here's a policy platform of the Alberta Republicans that is antithetical to a policy that the Alberta Prosperity Project wants to run with. Okay, fantastic. Now we've found something that we can have a discussion about. We both agree what the end goal should be, but here's our sticking point. So if we want to get through this, I mean, what did Cameron Davies spend his whole, I don't know when this occurred, early 2010s, roughly? What did he spend his whole time doing? Was uniting the Wild Rose and the PCs into what we know now as the UCP, and look at what happened with that. So to believe that it can't happen again, or that there's irreconcilable differences, or whatever, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just going to be a matter of hashing it out and having these guys sit down and decide how, like you said, okay, so we get the big win. All right, now what?
So they don't even need to be 100% in alignment with all their issues. So the thing is, the Alberta being not associated with the government, the Alberta Prosperity Project, they can easily just say, like, here's our vision for Alberta. And that vision can be different than the Alberta Republicans. Mm-hmm. Those can coexist. Like, if one vision resonates more with people than the other, that's fine. It's just that you'd ask, like, well, what is the role of the Alberta Republicans? And if they're saying, well, we're a Alberta independence, like an Alberta First Party, and they would support Alberta through an independence, through political pressure, then does that still have a role? Is that splitting votes? Or if they get some MLAs in there, are they applying pressure to the UCP? Are they able to hold them to account? Do they provide a voice in the legislature that is not fully, that doesn't have any volume right now?
Yeah.
So if any of those things are true, then maybe there's some merit. If vote splitting in certain key, like in Edmonton ridings or Calgary ridings, if vote splitting is an issue, then perhaps we just talk to people and be smart, and we just say, like, well, we still have to be strategic. Maybe one party resonates with your values, but maybe we be strategic. You can still put pressure on them, saying, like, well, okay, Alberta Republicans, don't run a candidate in here and call it out. Like, these are some vote splitting ridings. Maybe you flag that and say, like, it would be a dick move if you ran a candidate in this particular riding versus safe ridings, etc. So there are ways. That's a whole other side. But, like, if they get a couple in, it feels like it could be a tool in the political side of the spectrum that we don't have in this on the non-political side. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So is that worth having a discussion, or is history with examples they saw previous movements maybe fail, and they're attributing the failure to these to a new party or an independence party that are. So I guess maybe the question is, like, are some of the conclusions from the past the correct conclusions? So the conclusion being independence parties tanked the vote or vote split or harmed conservative movements, and they gave a bunch of seats away. Or is the conclusion that conservatives lose seats when they don't stick to principles, when they do not govern in a way that is very conservative? So depending on how you think about it, it's maybe a different equation. So yes, it would be great to get them together. It's just they might not even be talking about the same things.
That's true.
That's what I'm worried about. Is like
talking past each other.
Well, it's maybe the fundamental part of the issue is they don't think there's a role for any party in this movement, but at the same time they cheer on Daniel Smith for making moves in the right direction, which is kind of hypocritical if they're saying it's completely nonpartisan. Well, what happens during negotiations? You're putting trust in the UCP to carry you through negotiations, and will that provide the best? Like, will that ensure a good framework for building a new Alberta, or is there enough in the UCP that's maybe there's self-preservation, maybe they don't apply the right pressure in the right places, or maybe they're not firm enough, or like there are some risks. So are a few other stronger voices, is that something that can help, or is the threat of losing seats enough of a threat that the UCP has to listen more to the people that elect them?